Itharael, but as a cage. The Worldstone hid Sanctuary not as a shield, but as a cage, its magic binding heaven to a rotting host. Imperious Itharael Malthael saw the truth. Every angelic breath was threaded with her venom. They gambled on fire to break the chain. Tyrael called it murder. Oriel wept. But the Worldstone's collapse did not sever Lilith, it unshackled heaven. The real crime was the doubt it left behind. Did Angiris love Lilith, or only her ruin? The Angiris Council's 3-2 vote imperious. Tyrael, Itharael against Oriel. Malthael was no act of malice. They shattered Sanctuary to sever Lilith's anchor, her corruption leaching into heaven's bones. Her war's corruption storms were leaching into not chaos, but a fulcrum. Every fallen angel, every mortal soul twisted by sin, was a thread in this gambit. The Worldstone's collapse did not kill Lilith, it starved her. Heaven bled to save itself. Now the question festers, did Angiris trade his daughter's body for a curse or a cure? The Sin War Tribunal's verdict split the Angiris Council 3 for ruin, 2 for mercy. Imperious Itharael Malthael saw no path but fire. Tyrael and Oriel clung to fragile he. In the Sin War the novel that shadows Diablo Roman 3 ashes, this schism crystallized heaven's dire calculus. Sanctuary's threads were bound to Lilith's blood, a noose around the high heavens. To sever the tie, the Worldstone had to shatter. The vote was not malice. It was a gambita blade turned inward to cut rot from the divine flesh. The Sin War's storms were not mere conflict. They were the final convulsions of a world strangled by a fallen queen's legacy. Every infernal tide, every celestial fracture, funneled toward this moment, a sacrifice to starve Lilith's line of heaven's lifeblood. The Council's majority did not condemn Sanctuary. They exorcised a parasite wearing a world's skin. The question lingers darker now. Did Angiris pact by salvation, or merely delay the hour of reckoning? The Book of Cain names the Worldstone as Sanctuary's veil, a shield against heaven's gaze, against hell's hunger. But what if the stone was also a tether? Imperious, Itharael, Malthael, 3 voices who saw the truth. Tyrael and Oriel 2 who did not. The tribunal's split was no accident, it was a calculated fracture. To collapse the Worldstone, to sever heaven's bond to Lilith, Lilith's banishment to the void was not an end. Angiris cast her there, yes, but the void is porous, a membrane, not a prison. The Worldstone, forged from Angiris' own essence, became her conduit. A lifeline through which she bled corruption into heaven's halls. Sanctuary's creation was her first breath in a new lung. Its destruction a throat cleared. Consider the math. 3 votes to sever the thread, 2 to preserve it. The Council did not condemn Sanctuary. They exorcised a parasite wearing a world's skin. The stone's collapse was no sin, it was a scalpel. A purge, a risk that heaven's architecture had grown too weak to hold. Tyrael called it betrayal, Oriel murder. But what if their grief was a mirror? What if they mourned not Sanctuary, but the lie of its purity? The stone hid monsters, yes, but also the rot it nourished. The Council's gambit was this: better a world lost than a God compromised. The question now is not why they voted, it is why the Worldstone held so long. And why, when it finally broke, Lilith's shadow did not wither, only grow. The Angiris Council's blade struck true, not to judge, but to unmake a chain. Angiris, guided by Mephisto's whisper, had bound the Worldstone to his will. He dimmed the Nephilim's light, forging fragile men who bled slower, suffered longer. Heaven did not weep for them. They knew what Lilith's womb had become, a parasite fed on divine fire. The vote was not cruelty. It was a tourniquet. The Worldstone's fracture severed the umbilical, yet the Council's seers erred. They thought the poison spent. They did not see how Lilith, in her rot, had nested deeper. Her shadow did not wither, it learned. The iron halls of pandemonium echo with this truth. Even the righteous cut threads they cannot unravel. What is a gambit but a grave dug for the wrong corpse? The Council's 3-2 majority silenced Sanctuary, but in that silence, Lilith's breath grew steady. The poison lifeline was severed, yet the wound bled new. For in breaking the Worldstone, heaven did not kill the hunger, it merely gave it a body, a name. A child, the council's grief was not in the act, it was in the echo. In the knowledge that every lock forged breeds a key, and every shadow a hand to feed it. The asterisk book of Cain asterisk does not mince words. Sanctuary's birth was a dagger twisted in heaven's ribs. Angiris and Lilith, bound by blood and deceit, forged it as a conduit, a bridge for her rot to seep into the divine. Every prayer, every soul, a venomous tide masked as devotion. The council saw it, felt it. The Worldstone, that fragile heart of creation, was not a gift but a gilded noose. 3 voted to cut the re, 2 clung to he that the bond could be purified, that the poison could be siphoned without shattering the vessel. But Lilith's corruption was not a wound. It was a asterisk host asterisk. The Worldstone itself had become her womb. To let it live was to let her rise. The vote was not cruelty, it was a surgeon's blade. A gambit to collapse the Worldstone's lattice, to starve Lilith's husk of the life force it leached. The Angiris knew the cost, they knew the screams. But the eternal conflict had taught them this: some chains must be burned to break. Some fires must consume asterisk everything asterisk. Angiris' rage in D4 was not just for Sanctuary. It was for the truth he could not unsee. The council's majority did not destroy a world. They exorcised a parasite, and yet the blood remains, the keys remain. For every severance a shadow waits. And every shadow remembers. Tyrell's dissent in the chamber still echoes a lone voice against the storm. His hand trembled as he cast his vote. Later, that same hand shattered the Worldstone. How does a rebel become a savior? The black soulstone's weight in his palm, its void black surface pulsing with stolen light, answered that question. Malthael's fall was not an end but a catalyst. The soulstone's shattering did not erase sin, it exposed the rot beneath. The council's vote was a scalpel, not a hammer. They knew Lilith's corruption thrived in Sanctuary's bones, in the Worldstone's fragile heart. To save heaven, they let the world burn. Tyrell, once a traitor, became the wound's bandage aspect of wisdom, bearing the guilt of a choice that was never his. Can wisdom wear a crown forged in another's betrayal? The paradox gnaws, the vote's cruelty was its courage. Every soul lost was a price paid to starve Lilith's hunger, yet the blood remains, the keys remain. Tyrell's new title is a cage. He watches the scars of his actions fester, the black soulstone's shadow now his own. What does a god do when his wisdom is just a deeper lie? The council's gamble was this: sever the root, let the poison die with it, but poisons leave echoes. And echoes remember. The Worldstone, cracked and seething, had become a festering artery. Baal's corruption pulsed through its veins, turning Sanctuary's once sacred walls into a prison for heaven's own. Angiris, that cunning exile, had bound Lilith's blood to its foundation, a betrayal carved in stone. The council saw not a sanctuary but a shackle. Their vote was no act of cruelty. It was a surgeon's cut, amputating a limb to save the body from rot. Sanctuary's spires, now jagged teeth of broken marble, had whispered Lilith's name for centuries. Every battle, every prayer, every doctor of holy water had fed the Worldstone's hunger. The Nephilim, that fragile cross of angel and demon, were never meant to thrive. They were a wound, a scar tissue heaven could not control. The council's 3 dissenting voices wept, but their majority knew. To let the Worldstone die was to sever Lilith's grip on the mortal realm. Ash fell like snow that night. The sky cracked in, not in fury, but in release. Did the council foresee the void left behind? The echoes of their gamble still twist through timeth Worldstone's ghost, the unquiet dead of Sanctuary, the way Hell's armies now march with Lilith's shadow in their ranks. Was this freedom or merely a delay? The stone is gone, the bloodline remains. And heaven, ever watchful, waits to see if the poison truly dies, or if it only sleeps. The cycle's gears turn, heaven's chains creak. The Angiris Council's 3-2 vote was not betrayal, it was a scalpel. To sever the Worldstone's tether, to starve Lilith's rot of Sanctuary's lifeblood. The chronicler's gaze now lingers on the council chamber's silence, where 3 voices drown 2. A sacrifice etched in starlight and ash. What does a god sacrifice when it saves the world? The bloodline's survival is not a victory, but a test. The sin war's shadow stretches long, its debts unpaid. Lilith's return in Diablo Roman 4 is no accident, it is the echo of a wound left in. The council knew. They voted not to condemn but to contain, to let the world burn as a shield. The chronicler now refuses to see the Worldstone's fall as failure. Its shards, scattered like tears, were not a loss, they were a lock. Heaven's vault sealed against a mother's vengeance. The eternal conflict's tide does not ebb, it reroutes. Sanctuary's ghosts are not victims, they are anchors, and the chronicler, their pen trembles. For what is written in grief is never truly erased. The poison sleeps, but sleep is not death. And in the dark, between stars, Lilith's breath grows warm. And if this unsettles the order, the next page of the Codex asks, what if the shards still whisper? The Worldstone's fragments, shattered by Tyrael's hand, pulse with a buried truth. A lifeline severed, yet a tether remains. Could each shard hold a thread of heaven's choked breath? The dust of sanctuary does not lie. What if the council's vote was not an end but a beginning? The Codex turns. Will you follow? Could the Angiris Council's vote have been a mistake? What if their 3-2 decision wasn't a sin but a scalpel? The eternal conflict had carved its weight into every choice. Sanctuary's Worldstone was not just a bridge, it was a shackle. A conduit for Lilith's breath, warm and toxic, seeping into heaven's veins. To sever that bond, the council gambled the Worldstone's collapse would starve her return. They did not destroy Sanctuary. They exsanguinated a parasite. The math of sacrifice is never clean. The eternal conflict demands accounting in blood and time. Did they miscalculate? Or was this ruin the only viable birth pangs for a heaven unchoked? The Codex does